All right. Good morning, everybody. So you should know me by now. My name is Brad Spiegel, and I'm leading the Building Outdoor Communities work with the Made by Mountains partnership. And this is an exciting update that we have today with John Whitehead from Appalachian State University. Him and Ash are working with the Center for Economic Research and Policy Analysis, helping our initiative to figure out how we can create economic impact data from recreation demand and spending in Western North Carolina. So the title, as you can see, it's this initial analysis of the survey, the recreation demand and spending survey. App State created this survey that you all should be aware of because we sent this survey out in, was it January? And John is going to go over that. We requested feedback, and the survey was sent out to a large number of people, 2,000 or so people. And here, this is an initial analysis of the results. So I'm going to let John kind of dive into the findings of this initial analysis and explain how this information is going to be useful as you all are continuing to do your outdoor community and economy planning work. All right, John, I'm going to switch it to you.
Okay, thanks, Brad. And I'm going to share my screen here. And can y'all see that? Okay, great. So, yeah, these are preliminary results from our survey data collection effort. And they are top level results. So just please keep that in mind as I'm going along. We still have a lot of work to do. And so first, here's just to remind you, if we haven't met you yet, this is the App State team. And you see there, Melissa is now at the University of Montana, but when we got this thing going, she was at App State. And Ash Morgan and myself, we're in the Department of Economics. And just to give the big message to start, we have 1,788 survey respondents who took outdoor recreation trips to Western North Carolina. So in my business and analyzing survey data, that's a pretty big sample, and it looks like it is. We think it's sufficient, or even beyond sufficient, to do the analyses that we've been talking about since this project began, and going even further. The data look great so far in terms of doing these analyses. And again, these are all preliminary results. Please don't publicize anything yet. Don't take the number that we present or that you'll have access to and try to do any analyses with it. We just need just a little bit more time to make sure that we've got everything correct. And we think by the time the Outdoor Economy Conference rolls around in September, we'll have a full report ready, and we'll also have individual reports for each county and Qualla Boundary. And in the presentation, we highlight some numbers for certain counties, and these are counties that might have the most recreation participation, the top 5 or 6. But the full information is available in the Google Drive, and a link will be going out sometime after the webinar is completed. Okay, so just to remind y'all of where we have come from, on January 10th, we completed the draft survey questionnaire. And this questionnaire is on the Qualtrics internet platform. So this is an internet survey that we're conducting. Brad distributed that to building outdoor community participants. And we received a lot of feedback, a lot of great feedback. So thanks for that. And we revised the survey in the next 2 or 3 weeks following those comments. And then we were anxious to get this thing going. So we, as soon as the questionnaire was revised, we distributed it to the Donata consumer panel. And in a couple of meetings, we received questions about, how did you get these responses? So a little bit about the Donata, this company. This is where we get the sample. They boast that they're the world's largest first-party data company, and they perform consumer survey research. They have thousands and thousands of business clients that they provide survey responses to, and in this marketing research business, regular people opt in to participate in these survey panels, and they receive a small compensation for each survey that they complete. Now, Donata, it has a long history. It began as it began in 2017. Research Now and Survey Sampling International merged. I think Research Now had better capabilities in performing the surveys themselves, and Survey Sampling International had this huge consumer panel. And then the new company was Research Now SSI, and in 2019 they changed their name to Donata. And here at App State, we've been using Survey Sampling International and Donata panels, survey respondents for a long time, and we had a lot of confidence in the company going into this project. Okay, so in terms of survey itself, we were hoping to receive responses from people who participated in outdoor recreation activities in the 25 Western North Carolina counties and the Qualla Boundary. And we focused in on respondents from North Carolina and the bordering states, those states cover about 2/3 of all overnight visitors to Western North Carolina for leisure purposes. And that number, the baseline number, is from Visit North Carolina. So in terms of how we found people who met that target, we first asked people what state they lived in. And then we were able to ask a few demographic questions. I think we asked 5 demographic questions. And then we said, hey, did you participate in any of these activities in any of these counties or the Qualla Boundary in the year 2022? And if they said yes, then that is the respondent that we are targeting, and they completed the rest of the survey. If they said no, then they were basically sent home. We didn't ask them any more questions. And so here is the survey response and people who met the screener questions for each of those states. And on the left-hand side of this chart, we've got the number of people, number of respondents, and those numbers responded to the survey bar is on the left for each state, and that's a lighter blue. That number adds up to over 5,000. And then the darker blue bar on the right for each state is the number of people who participated in outdoor recreation in Western North Carolina. And so you can see that the participation rate for North Carolina is higher than for the other states. which is good news in terms of it tells us that, I mean, that's an expected result. So every time you get an expected result, that gives you more confidence in your data. And so the sum of the blue bars is a little bit under 2,000. And then as I mentioned before, our final sample is about 1,800. And so we'll talk about how we whittled that number down. But in terms of the overall demographics, this is our first quality check on the data. We can compare pretty closely the percentages of respondents who are female, white, graduates of four-year colleges, and 65 years old and above. And those numbers are readily available from the US Census, and that's the last column on the right. And then from our sample, the percentages are in the middle column. So if you look at percent white, percent college graduate, and age 65 plus, those numbers are pretty close. And so we think that our sample is fairly representative in terms of those three demographics. And the only problem is the percentage females in our sample. Our sample is overrepresented in terms of female respondents relative to the census. And I'm not, most of the questions that we ask are in terms of behavior from the household. And so I'm not sure if that's a huge problem, but to the extent that it is, all of the results that we're presenting are weighted on the female demographic to better represent the sample. The fifth demographic that we asked up front was an income question. And the way we asked the question in terms of categories of income, like 25,000, did your household earn 25,000, between 25,000 and 35,000 in 2022? That's not the way that the census presents the summary information. They present the information as above or below the median for the state. And so it's not directly comparable, but looking at those numbers and how the patterns move across states, we're fairly confident that our sample is well represented in terms of the income demographic. Okay, so I alluded to this before. We did a lot of work to ensure that the final sample we're working with is high quality. We have some attention checks built into the survey, and respondents who provided inconsistent answers are removed. Even in paid surveys, sometimes respondents don't provide an answer to every question. And in Qualtrics, you can require people to answer every question, but sometimes you leave a few without that requirement, so you can see who's going to skip answers. And that data is usually lower quality. People aren't paying as much attention to the survey questions as they could. And then the trips and the spending variables, expenditure variables that we'll talk about in the rest of the survey, are top coded at the 99th percentile. And this helps mitigate the problem of outliers when we do our statistics. And so top coding simply means that if you might have a few extreme people who say they take a trip every day, and you might have some people who say they spend tens of thousands of dollars on a trip, and you're just not sure if there's some exaggeration going on or a lack of care in answering the question. And so top coding just take that number and recode it to the next highest number. Okay, so on to the results. In terms of recreation participation, whether a person from these states came to Western North Carolina and went hiking or whatever, we find that people who are older, 65 plus, are less likely to participate in outdoor recreation in Western North Carolina. People with higher incomes are more likely to participate. So in our sample of people who participate, the average income is household income is $76,000. And for people who do not participate in outdoor recreation in Western North Carolina, the average is $62,000. Males are more likely to participate. whites are more likely to participate. Those who graduated from a four-year college are more likely to participate, and North Carolina residents are more likely to participate. And so from here on out in this presentation, we're going to be looking at just the sample of people who participate in recreation. Okay, and then the top destinations that we find for outdoor recreation trips, and this is from a question where we asked people, how many trips did you take overall? And then a follow-up question was, where did you take those trips? So the percentages, when you look at the full results on the Google Drive, the percentages are going to add up to greater than 100% because we have people taking multiple trips to different places. So the top destination is Buncombe County. And then we've got a drop off in between. We've got 5 areas that have between 10% and 15% participation as destinations: Watauga, Qualla Boundary, then Allegheny, Ashe, and Avery, and every other county in the sample has participation between about 5% and 10%. And this is what the full results look like. So for each variable that we'll be discussing today, we have a table that tells you how many trips or participation, how many people chose that destination, how many trips they took to that destination, and how much money they spent on their most recent trips. We have 4 tables, and then we have 4 figures with this blue bar chart for each of those counties and the Qualla Boundary. And that link will be going out after the webinar. Okay, so for each of those destinations, the average number of trips looks like this. We've got 1, 2, 3, I think 9 areas that if a respondent takes a trip to that site, they take more. The respondents who take those trips average more than 2 trips in 2022. Okay, so the highest is Caldwell County, then Mitchell, Burke, Clay, all the way down to Avery. And for the rest of the destinations, the average number of trips is less than 2. And we're going to be doing some analysis to figure out what drives the variation in the number of trips taken to each destination. But our preliminary analysis tells us that trips are higher if the respondent lives in the 25 county region. Okay, and in terms of reviewing some economic analyses, that tells us that the lower the travel cost, the more trips are going to be made, and so that lends some more validity to our data. And in terms of other variables, if respondent has more education and is younger, they take more trips. And the overall average of the number of trips is 4.24. Okay, and this is for the year, and that ranges from a minimum of 1 trip to a maximum of 45 trips. Okay, and then we ask questions, more detailed questions about the most recent trip. And you ask about the most recent trip because you want to minimize recall bias. You want the information that you're asking about to be fresh in the minds of the respondents, or as fresh as possible. So on this most recent trip, 2/3 stayed overnight, and 39% of those overnight stays were for 2 nights. 40% of those overnight stays, people stayed in a hotel or motel. 34% traveled with one other person. And then about 3/4 of those people were very satisfied with their trip. And only a handful were dissatisfied with their trip. So that tells us that we're selling a pretty good product. And then we want to use this most recent trip information to do some more detailed analyses. So we just want to check and see if that most recent trip is fairly typical of, on average, each of those 4 trips that the person makes. So 83% say that this was a typical trip. And when we asked this question, we listed the things that we wanted people to consider, like how much money they spent, where they went, how long they stayed. We have a follow-up question that looks at, for the 17% that says it was not a typical trip. We have a follow-up question that asks them what was different about it. And we'll be looking at that question pretty soon. Okay, and the most recent trip destination, about 14% of those were to the Qualla Boundary in Cherokee. The next highest was Buncombe, then Ash, Watauga, and Henderson. Okay, and then for the most recent trip, we asked people how much money they spent on various spending categories. And so the average amount of spending on those most recent trips was almost $500, so $490. The biggest category was lodging at $124, and then restaurant spending $96, and in order gasoline, entertainment, and groceries. Outdoor recreation gear was $26 on average spent, and then souvenirs, other travel like an Uber ride, and then other miscellaneous spending was about $12. And this number of $490 is, within the range of spending on similar trips from other surveys and other reports. And so we think we have a pretty good number here that we can use to estimate economic impacts and contributions of outdoor recreation trips in each county. Hey, and just like when we look at the number of trips that people take, we want to do some analysis and see if the spending numbers that we receive vary in directions that we might expect. So we've done some preliminary analysis, and we're finding that spending increases by $139 for each additional night stayed. And that, when I see a number like that, that strikes me as plausible. And then spending increases by $39 for each additional person in the travel party. And that's another number that strikes me as plausible. So we're pretty happy with the spending numbers that we've received. Now we're also finding that spending increases with household income, which makes sense, and spending decreases with age. Okay, and then we're going to be doing some economic analysis that is not as straightforward as adding up spending and estimating economic impacts. And we have, if you are into the program, if you're in one of the first 2 cohorts, you've seen some videos and been presented with some readings. And if you've taken a look at that, I just ask you to try to recall the fifth video in this series where we talked about the contingent valuation method. And this is a survey-based approach that directly elicits an individual's willingness to pay for recreation. Okay, so on this survey, we asked some contingent valuation method questions. And if you are in I think the 3rd cohort, this is a preview of what you'll have an opportunity to take a look at. Okay, so we asked each respondent a contingent valuation method question. And this is a screenshot from the question presented. I think the dollar value here, this is for local day trips. So this is a standard question that's used in economics. So we first said, now suppose that your most recent trip to, and inserted there was the location of their most recent trip. So let's say, now suppose that your most recent trip to Watauga County costs more money. We asked them to think about this. The cost increase could have been the result of higher gas prices, food prices, or something else. And then imagine the cost is $23 higher than the total that you previously spent. So that $23, each respondents received one of 4 randomly assigned dollar value. And then when we asked the spending question, the Qualtrics software added up those numbers and gave us a total spending number that we inserted into this question. So if they spent $100, we asked them to suppose that the cost was $123. And then the question is, do you think you would still have taken this trip? Yes, no, or don't know. And we're getting good results for at least one segment of our sample. We asked the question to different dollar values to locals and non-locals, because non-locals are going to spend more money. So we asked higher dollar values. And we had different dollar values for people who took a day trip or an overnight trip on their most recent trip. So here's a result for the non-local overnight trip. On the vertical axis, we have the percentage of people who say they would still take the trip. And on the horizontal axis, we have that additional cost. So the additional costs range from less than $400 to over $1,200. And those blue dots tell us the percentage of people who said they would still take the trip at each additional cost. So the fact that those blue dots are moving to the southeast as we go from left to right is good news, because in economics, we say that our survey respondents are behaving rationally. As the cost goes up, you want to do less of that thing. So with these data, we're able to estimate the willingness to pay for non-local overnight trips. And our current preliminary estimate is $454. Okay, so as described in the videos and the reading, this amount should be interpreted as the amount that the trip is worth to a respondent over and above how much money they spent. And this is the economic value number that's used in benefit cost analysis, the type of benefit cost analysis that the U.S. Forest Service does for recreation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers uses for recreation projects, and other government agencies use. Okay, it's a different number than that we're going to be using for economic impact analysis, which is the spending, but it's an important number. And so we think that the survey data supports, we'll be able to support some benefit cost analysis. Okay, so what are we doing? So this is how far we've gotten. We think we've worked on the data, and we have a high quality sample of about 1,800 responses. And so what are we doing? So the rest of the summer, we're going to be developing estimates of the aggregate number of local, non-local North Carolina and out-of-state visitors to the region. Okay, and with those aggregate numbers and the averages and summaries that we presented today, we'll be able to develop estimates of baseline economic impacts and contributions of outdoor recreation to the Western North Carolina region in each individual county and the Qualla Boundary. And we're going to develop estimates of baseline individual and aggregate economic values using the travel cost and the contingent valuation method. And so I just described the contingent valuation method. Also in the video and reading materials, we talked about the travel cost method, and this is when you estimate a recreation demand curve for individual sites. So one thing, we've employed a graduate student at App State this summer who is currently using Google Maps. So he's finding the travel distances between each resident zip code and the zip code of the of each county and the Qualla Boundary population centers. So we found the biggest city or town in each county. We're using that zip code, and we're developing these. We're finding the distances, and with those distances, we can convert that to a travel cost number and estimate those recreation demand curves. And so we'll be using that for to estimate economic values of trips. And hopefully, if the model is working well at that point, we'll be able to make forecast of how trips changes under various situations that are that might be of interest to each of the participating counties. And so, like I said earlier, we will be able to provide individual reports for each building outdoor communities participating county. And we are targeting the Outdoor Economy Conference to have this ready. My 30-minute timer just went off, so I did great, at least in terms of hitting the time limit.
Thank you, John. We can open it up for questions. We can feel free to unmute yourself and say who you are and who you represent. And I think that'd be helpful for those on the call. And or you could put your question in the chat, either way. Don't be shy.
I'll say Ash and Melissa are both here if you want to ask them a question. They're both on vacation though, so their heads might be a little cloudy.
Melissa,
I was just say, I just want to throw a comment out there. That was really absolutely fascinating just for a first look. I've got Google up and I'm like looking at Ashe County right now to be like outdoor recreation, just to see like, get an idea of the geography and what is drawing people to certain places. So that's going to be really fascinating to look into a little bit more.
Melissa, would you mind speaking to the benefit of being able to communicate this data as a one-pager to maybe certain elected officials or planning boards, or, in our 7-month curriculum, at those of you that have already been through it or are in the middle of it, by the time you get to month 7, it's really about how do you tell the story about the data. So I think there's some really good advice, but Melissa, if you have any tips on, you might be looking at this data and like, well, what do I do with this, right? But like, Melissa, if you want to chime in and just give some food for thought about that. Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
There may be a lot of noise in the background. It's so great to see many of you on here. Yeah, the survey is great. I think the data is really fascinating. I think the most important part is being able to take it and tell your story of your community, especially if you're moving towards grants or economic development. The last few sessions that we wrapped up in the 7-month cohort kind of displays how to do that. But I think people for better or worse, sometimes people want to know exactly what the impact's going to be. If we bring in this many visitors, this is how much money it's going to bring into our community and what those impacts are. And so I think what John and Ash have created will give us an idea of different projects and impacts. I also think we need to always sell the quality of life for our residents. While tourism is great and it brings in that economic value, what it also does on the sidelines is the quality of life and attracts new residents to a community or keeps residents we've had a long time that are very invested in it. Hope that helps Brad a little bit.
I love that piece. Yes, I think the more that we can just integrate that quality of life piece with the economic development piece and the tourism impact piece, the better. Anyone else have any questions? And you can feel free to email me after. This is being recorded, so I will send the recording within the week.
I just wanted, this is Beth Hiley, I'm in Burke County, send out a thanks to this whole program. We've been working on an economic impact study for Valley's Lakeside Park. And of course, we can't use everything that's been thrown out there, but just working on the basis. And it's been exciting. We did the intercept surveys, which I was really dreading, asking people why they're at the park and how much they spend and things like that. But everyone was friendly and it was very rewarding. And we learned even more stories to tell. Where were they going? We thought maybe they only went to a park in another section of the county before this one existed, and they learned they had been going to another county, and that helped us translate the transportation costs better of what residents were saving not having to drive out of the county anymore. And so these numbers are great for the whole Western North Carolina area, but I encourage you to get out there and fumble around and try to come up with some of your own numbers.
Thanks, Beth.
Hey, Brad, this is Ash. Just to
Yeah, hey, Ash.
good morning. Just to
Good
add on a little bit what John was saying. So I'm more involved in the economic impact numbers side, but obviously John's very excited about the data so far. And so I know him well enough to know when he gets this excited, there's some good stuff coming down the pike. I've seen that look on his face before, but just in terms of taking everything that's John doing and be able to look at the county level impact, again, that'll be understanding, the impact of your infrastructure in terms of jobs created. So you get some different metrics beyond the contingent valuation, travel cost method, income, economic activity, but also just thinking in the future, this could, again, just to reiterate, could help the counties understand, if they expand a trail and they think, it'll bring an extra 5,000 visitors in a year, then we could take this and help them understand, well, what would that mean in terms of additional future economic impact, which perhaps may help them in a proposal or something of that nature.
Thanks, Ash. Yeah, so that piece, we are targeting for kind of that mid-September range to have more of a, how do we take the information that John presented and turn it into economic impact analyses at the individual county level. And, we'll determine what's the best way to share this with everyone here. Anyone else? Any questions or next steps?
I've got one more thing on next steps, Brad.
Yes.
Every time that me and Ash have been able to meet with y'all face to face, we just offer up. We just say, this is a dynamic process. It's a two-way process, and if there are analyses that you're interested in, feel free. Don't hesitate to ask us to conduct those or talk or discuss those with us. The reports that we're going to be presenting are more baseline reports, and each of the 25 counties in Qualla Boundary have different projects going on that we're not aware of, and so please let us know what those are, and if we can use the baseline models that we're developing to support the analyses or projects or grant proposals that you have. Don't hesitate to ask, and we're excited about doing that kind of work. And also, thanks for everyone who showed up for the webinar today.
Just wanted to follow up and ask a question about what you were just saying with asking for additional analysis. Is that a part of sort of this ongoing effort here, or would that be something that would we need to rely on local funding in order to fund, or just curious how that fits in with the overall project?
If we can pull it off with existing data, then that's a freebie. It's
Okay.
part of this project.
Okay.
I think we're on the hook to stay busy until the project is completed. Otherwise, we're done at the Outdoor Economy Conference and we're walking off, and I don't think that's what we signed up to do. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
we're happy to spend time on what y'all need to accomplish.
Great, thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna close it up then. If there's not further questions, thanks Duncan for that question. And let's see, so I just wanted to kind of what we were talking about in regards to the Outdoor Economy Conference. If you haven't registered yet, there's still a tier 2 early bird special that's I think that we have until July 1st for that. So check that out. There's going to be amazing content about building vibrant outdoor communities and kind of the coalitions and partnership building at the national level that's occurring to really advance outdoor economic development work. So that should be really exciting, and we hope that we're definitely going to have curated content for outdoor communities in our program. So that's really it, and we appreciate you being here. As of now, there's not another webinar scheduled, but I will be in touch as soon as we have some more content coming your way. And we added our Instagram handle to this page, which should have been on there from the beginning. So Joanna Brown, our communications and branding manager, she posts some really good stories and fun things on Instagram. So follow us there.
Keep
Thank you all.
tagging me as well. If you've got events, we're going into summer, we're going into the busy time. So keep tagging me when you're doing fun things as well, so I can share the stories and I can help you promote.
Perfect. Thanks, Joanna. All right, everyone. Have a great day.